These are 7 players you need to add immediately in fantasy football after week 3, plus 7 players that you must stash now to get ahead of your league mates. Before we get into it, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Starting at number 7 with Bucky Irving. We've been talking about Irving on this channel for weeks now, and he continues to look fantastic on the ground, as he had 9 carries for 70 yards on Sunday, compared to White's 6 carries for 17 yards. And while you could argue that Rashad had that groin injury, so we don't really know if he was completely 100%, but nonetheless, Irving is clearly the better back on the ground at this point. Even the head coach said in a post-game interview that Bucky has earned a bigger role. It's going to be hard for Tampa Bay to keep Irving off the field. And if he starts to eat into Rashad's pass down work, that is going to be a problem for White owners, but that's going to be a really good thing for Irving owners because he could be a league winner at that point. If he's getting the majority of the carries and starting to eat into, maybe split the pass down work with Rashad, like, Irving has top 12, top 15 upside at the position if that were to happen. So if he's somehow still on your waiver wire, he is the top priority. He is the number 1 ad just because of his potential, because of how good of a player he is, and because of how poor Rachaad White has looked. All those things combined, especially if you are in desperate need of a running back, then be aggressive getting Irving on your team. At number 6, Draan Jennings. We had Jennings listed as a sleeper last week, but we did not think that he was going to go nuclear like he did, single-handedly winning people their matchups. If you plugged in Jennings in your flex or you picked him up last minute, you are thanking the fantasy gods. And if you were up against Jennings, you probably lost. So that's terribly frustrating. I had plenty of leagues where I was up against Draan Jennings and I did in fact lose. So I feel for the people that were up against him, and I'm happy for the people who scooped him up last minute, plugged him into your lineup. I mean, 11 catches for 175 yards and 3 touchdowns on 12 targets. That's 46.5 fantasy points. Here's what I'll say about the whole thing. Don't go crazy with your fab on Jennings, because you have to remember, there was no CMC, there was no George Kittle, there was no Deebo Samuel. Brandon Ayuk still looks very rusty as he held out the entire offseason. So what happens if Kittle and Deebo return this week or the next? Jennings is going to be pretty much irrelevant. And then Ricky Pearsall is also waiting on the sideline as their first-round receiver that they drafted could be active in the next couple of weeks as well. So it's a situation where, like, you might get one more week out of Jennings, so don't cut him. But if he is a free agent, I wouldn't go crazy with your fab either, unless you just want to get one more potentially big performance. But it's not the long-term play. It's the short-term play. So don't get carried away with your fab here, because once this 49ers receiving core, their weapons on offense get healthy, I just don't see a world where Jennings has a significant role. Like, he's going to be involved after this performance, but it's not going to be groundbreaking. It's going to be nothing like this. So be smart with your fab. I have no problem getting Jennings on your team, but don't blow the bank on him after one huge week. At number 5, Braylon Allen is once again on this list and remains one of the best handcuffs, if not the best handcuff in all of fantasy football. There's not really much to say here. Like, you're stashing him if you're in a really deep league. He has some flex appeal if he falls into the end zone, but it's not like he's seeing enough volume where he can be an every down starter for your team. So he's more of a stash if you have room on your bench. If you're a Breece Hall owner, like, he should not be on the waiver wire at this point, because if something were to ever happen to Breece, God forbid, then Braylon Allen has RB1 upside. But another thing that you have to remember that's kind of going under the radar is that the Jets played 3 games in 11 days. So last week against the Patriots, where they didn't have to do much, they pretty much had the win in the bag, you saw more Braylon Allen because they didn't really need Breece, and because what I just said, they played 3 games in 11 days. They're not going to wear Breece out if they don't have to. And that's a lot of football to start off the season. So that's my take. I don't think we see as much Braylon Allen going forward as people are expecting, but he's a nice looking back, and he is one of the most valuable stashes in all of fantasy. So if he's on the waiver wire, get him on your team, but don't go crazy with the fab either. At number 4, Davien Wicks. This is a forward-thinking ad. This isn't an ad that you're going to see on every waiver wire column. I like to give you guys players that you should pick up now before they go off or before they're on every single waiver wire list. And you should be able to snag Wicks for cheap or for free right now because everyone has forgotten about this wide receiver room in Green Bay that was really good last year because Jordan Love hasn't played since week 1. It's been the Malik Willis show. The Packers have got it done with their backup quarterback, but a lot of it has been because of the run game with Josh Jacobs and Malik Willis using his legs. They haven't thrown a ton, so you haven't seen a bunch of splash plays from these really talented wide receivers, but you're going to this week because it looks like Love is most likely going to play in week 4 as he looked really close last week. And from what we saw in Wicks last season, he was really good in his limited role. And Wicks is already starting to eat into Christian Watson snaps. I think that's very notable. Obviously, it hasn't shown up on the stat sheet yet because they've been run heavy, because it's been the Malik Willis show, and because Jordan Love has been out. But grab him on your team now before he has a nice day in week 4, and then you have to pay up for him. This is another situation where Green Bay, it's going to be hard for the Packers to keep Wicks off the field. We know Jayden Reed is the alpha in this Green Bay wide receiver room, but I think it's kind of up for grabs after that. And I would not be surprised if Wicks is the number 2 target in this passing game ahead of Christian Watson, ahead of Romeo Doubs. Both nice players. Christian Watson, uber talented, but he feels more like the splash wide receiver, the deep threat. Wicks feels like a possession guy similar to Jayden Reed. So get Wicks on your team now on a potent Green Bay offense in a really good ecosystem attached to an ascending superstar in Jordan Love. These are guys you want to bet on. These are guys you want to get on your roster before the big game happens. At number 3, Cam Akers didn't put up that big game that we were all hoping for, but the Texans got down big early and kind of abandoned the run, so it was not a good game script for Akers, but Cam still saw 9 carries, which was 82% of the rush attempts, and managed to find the end zone on a nice receiving score. But 2.3 yards per carry is disappointing to see. But one lesson we need to learn right now is this Minnesota Vikings defense is legit. They are making really good offenses look silly. The Texans last week, the 49ers the week before that. So I think Cam Akers is still a really good play. I think he's a guy you want to get on your team. Joe Mixon has that ankle injury. It would not shock me at all if Mixon is out this week and the next week. So anytime you can get the RB1 in Akers, who has the talent, he's going to get the opportunities on a Texans offense that will probably destroy the Jacksonville Jaguars in week 4. Cam Akers has a good shot at scoring a touchdown. They'll probably be leading in that game, which means more carries for Cam as well. So if you're in need of a running back, a spot start this week, or you already have Cam Akers on your team, hold him on your roster or get him on your team. I think he has a nice week 4. At number 2, Xavier Legette. Who would have thought that this Carolina offense would look completely different with Andy Dalton under center? I'm not a Bryce Young believer, so it doesn't shock me at all. I don't think Young is a good quarterback. I think he was a bust of a pick. He was a part of one of the worst trades in NFL history, so we don't need to go in on that. But that being said, I don't think Bryce Young ever starts again this year, even though there's rumors that he might, because of how well Andy Dalton played. 3 touchdowns, 319 passing yards. All I heard this past week was how everyone felt bad for Bryce because he had no weapons on offense. And then 35-year-old Andy Dalton throws 3 touchdowns. Looks phenomenal the minute he stepped on the field. So this is a Bryce Young problem, not a Panthers problem. I mean, Deontay Johnson over 100 yards and a touchdown. Adam Thielen looked really good. But this is where Xavier comes into play as Thielen got hurt in week 3, injured his hamstring. That is not a good injury, especially at that age. So we know this Carolina offense is going to be better now under Dalton. And the Panthers are going to utilize their first-round pick in Legette. I mean, look at this dude. He has a DK Metcalf type of frame, 6'3", 220 plus pounds, 4.3 speed. These are the guys you want to bet on. These talented young players that we haven't really seen what they're capable of yet. In a nice Dave Canale system with a solid quarterback in Dalton, like get Legette on your team now for cheap before he has a bigger role in week 4 because Thielen will most likely be out. He could be the alpha in this wide receiver room, and he could be the big play downfield threat on this Carolina offense, starving for playmakers on a team that's probably going to be trailing in a lot of games, forcing them to pass. I want to get Xavier on my team now before the eruption happens. At number 1, Roshan Johnson needs to have a larger role on this struggling Chicago offense. because he's one of those running backs that can quietly do it all and is Chicago's best rushing and receiving back, along with being strong in pass protection and on third downs and on short yardage goal line situations, as he's 6 feet tall, 225 pounds, and just frankly has the most upside in this backfield. I think he gives the Bears the best chance at winning. And the current RB1 on the roster in DeAndre Swift, who the Bears for some reason gave $24 million to this offseason, has looked atrocious, horrible, whatever you want to say. He's just looked so bad. 1.8 yards per carry on the year. He should not have the starting job anymore. It should be Roshan Johnson. He should be the workhorse back on this team. Yes, Khalil Herbert is going to have some sort of role in the backfield, but he's only seen 10% of the snaps so far this season. So apparently Chicago doesn't like to use Herbert. And I think Roshan impressed last year in his limited opportunities and needs to see a larger workload going forward. I think there's no way he doesn't. Like, this was his first game that he was activated, and it won't be the last. He should have a bigger role going forward. And yeah, it's not like it's a super attractive situation, as this Bears offense is a mess. Their offensive line is really bad. The play calling under Shane Waldron is embarrassing. So don't go crazy with your fab on him either, because the situation isn't ideal. But he's still a guy that I would like to take a shot on, throw a couple dollars on. And if you get him on your roster, he has the most upside out of any back in Chicago. Onto the stashes part of the video. I am more excited about these players that you should stash away on your IR spot or the last bench spot that you have. These are guys that could come in if anything were to happen to the starter and win you your league. First guy is Kendre Miller for the Saints. I mean, Alvin Kamara's workload that he's seeing right now is astronomical. He's an older running back that's not really efficient. If he were to get hurt and Kendre Miller can get healthy and stay healthy, he has league winner written all over him. So if you have an IR spot, Kendre Miller should absolutely be on it. But if he's already gone, take a look at Keaton Mitchell for the Baltimore Ravens coming off that ACL tear. Yes, Derrick Henry's there. Yes, Justice Hill is there. But if you can get Mitchell in that IR spot, he is an electric back. He's explosive. He has blazing speed. He's a guy that once he's fully healthy, Baltimore is going to have some sort of role for. And if Derrick Henry were to ever get injured, as he is an older back, I like Mitchell's upside. Next guy that I would also slide into my IR spot, if you have one, pick one of these guys if they're all available, is Ricky Pearsall, the wide receiver for the 49ers. With all the injuries in San Francisco, could be a nice piece moving forward. He's a rookie who I really like, who I think is really talented, strong route runner, on a good offense. So he's a guy you want to take a shot on if you can get him for cheap and stash him away in your IR spot if you have one. I also like Tyrone Tracy, the Giants rookie running back, Ray Davis, the Buffalo Bills rookie running back, Emmanuel Wilson, the running back for the Packers, and Tank Bigsby for the Jaguars. These are all running backs that you want to have on your bench spot. If something were to ever happen to the starter, they have incredible upside. That's why I really like to stash running backs more than wide receivers, because if the guy in front of them on the running back depth chart were to get hurt, they could be thrusted into a workhorse role and take your fantasy team over the top. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. If you got anything from the video, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and I will see you in the next one.